I'm a member of the Older Persons Advisory Group. OPAG is what we call ourselves. It's the foundation stone of Ageing Better in Camden. The OPAG members voted me onto the strategic board of ABC, and I've chaired the board for the last 4 years. And there are 4 older people on the board. These sessions that we're part of have been running over the last couple of weeks, looking at co-design and co-production of the Ageing Better projects. We older people in Camden have always been involved with the work of ABC as valued partners with the paid staff, helping to shape how the project develops. And this is true of the event today. 4 of us are members of OPAG, and we've been involved in the preparation for today's workshop, and will be playing a role in delivering it. The whole team involved are Alison, Harriet, Celia, Lydia, Kate, Jess, and Diana. And you'll hear from them and then have a chance to ask questions at the end. We're focusing today on co-production and our approach to promoting a warm welcome to anyone who joins an event or activity. I know I can feel a bit shy or nervous when joining a new group, sort of walking into a restaurant or going to an exercise class, and it feels a bit more comfortable if somebody acknowledges me and makes me feel welcome. For those people who've been isolated and alone and lonely for a long time, it's vitally important when they eventually find the courage and confidence to venture out to engage with other people, that they are made to feel welcome. And I think this warm welcome, as we all know, is even more important after this long period of lockdown, when our confidence has been knocked and our physical abilities have deteriorated. It became apparent in the early days of Ageing Better in Camden, through our conversations at OPAG meetings, that this warm welcome that we all need isn't always common sense or the norm, and that we must do something about making sure that the delivery agencies and beyond understand how crucial it is to make a person feel welcome, so that they can feel that the effort it took to get to the activity was worth it and paid off. ABC aims to lessen loneliness and isolation, and so we need to hook people in from the very start so that they feel encouraged to come along and get back into the community. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. And first off, Alison Blacksland, one of the programme managers, is going to give us a bit of background to ABC and introduce the warm welcome approach. So Alison, over to you.
So before we start, here's a brief introduction to the Ageing Better in Camden programme. We're one of 14 Ageing Better programmes across England which have been funded by the National Lottery Community Fund. We're a partnership of older people and Camden organisations working together to tackle social isolation and loneliness amongst older people. We're part of Age UK Camden and draw on existing skills and resources in the local community to tackle social isolation and loneliness. We fund work with over 30 local delivery partners who provide a wide range of outstanding activities, everything from art classes, yoga and jewellery making to bench-to-bench walks and cabaret. We've been supporting creative ways for older people to be actively involved in their local communities for the past 6 years. Thanks to the support of the National Lottery Community Fund, we've been able to test and learn new approaches and co-produce services to make older people's lives healthier and happier. So today we're here to talk about co-production. As Sue has said, power sharing and co-production have always been at the heart of Ageing Better in Camden. Our founding principle is that older people are our greatest asset and are valuable, not vulnerable. Our core belief is that older people are not people to be done to, but people with so much to offer. And this is reflected in how ABC has been developed. Before the programme began, older people who were involved with Aged Care Camden helped to shape the original funding bid. They ensured that many of the issues they felt strongly about, such as the digital inclusion strand, intergenerational work, and ways to reach older men, were built into the programme from the very start. Once the programme received funding, ABC began the process of commissioning the local projects who would deliver those activities. Older people formed the majority of members for the appraisal panel, making the decision on how the funding was to be allocated. Many of those who are involved at this stage have remained as part of the Older People's Advisory Group, who continue to meet monthly to discuss, advise and influence the programme. In addition, members of the Older People's Advisory Group sit on the Strategic Board, which holds the decision-making power for the programme. The chair of the Strategic Board, Sue Heiser, is our chair today, and Sue's an OPAG representative. And members work alongside peers from statutory and voluntary sector providers to continue to develop and enhance the programme. So, on to our warm welcome approach and how that was developed with the Older People's Advisory Group. Throughout the Ageing Better in Camden programme, older people have told us that being welcomed or not to a community activity has a big impact on whether or not they will return. A discussion with our Older People's Advisory Group revealed that everyone had their own stories of being welcomed or feeling rejected. So we decided to explore what a warm welcome looks like and how it can help tackle social isolation and loneliness. Here are just a few of the stories that were shared with us, which inspired us to work together with our Older People's Advisory Group practitioners and older people to develop the warm welcome approach. People told us, I tried to go to different activities there and it wasn't very nice. I felt more depressed when I went home. Then you stop coming, that's it. For me, if we're not welcome, we just don't come. And nobody actually said to me, nobody was kind enough to say to me, oh, hi, you're new, we have this, or, oh, normally so-and-so sits here, but come and sit with us. Nobody said that. So as I've already said, the Older People's Advisory Group play a vital role in shaping all aspects of ageing better in Camden. And warm welcome approach is just one example of how we've worked together on our shared commitment to tackle social isolation. So when we went to them with some of the horror stories we'd heard, they weren't shocked. Instead, they shared their own experiences of unfriendly groups and began the conversation on why warm welcome is key to engaging people to attend activities and then to keep them coming back. So there was clearly a need, and thanks to the National Lottery Community Fund's Test and Learn approach, we were able to review and adapt our plans to remodel the programme and focus on the co-production of a warm welcome. We consulted older people and our delivery partners to start looking at what barriers were preventing those who are socially isolated from attending some of the groups. We divided our new way of working to tackle social isolation into 3 steps. Firstly, we find the most socially isolated older people, then motivating them to get involved, and finally, where the warm welcome is vital, welcoming them with a pull to a new activity or group. Through our focus groups, the majority of respondents said they would not attend an unwelcoming group a second time. Interestingly, the older people we spoke to for our research identified that older people may lack the opportunity to make connections with no work or school gates, etc. And so where those opportunities do exist, they need to be as inclusive and supportive as possible. The data we collect using a variety of scales measuring loneliness, participants' health and well-being is showing that those who feel that they take part in more activities than their peers have a lower loneliness score. People told us how important a welcoming environment is and how it can lead to their ongoing attendance. And they felt that older people may need more of a focused welcome, as it's arguably more important that they access in social activities. Essentially, a warm welcome promotes good practice and an understanding that while all older people deserve a warm welcome, some may actually need it to engage and remain connected. Older people who are socially isolated or lonely will often struggle to join and interact with groups. Those who have slightly higher needs around mental health or other issues will also require support to engage with community activities. Many will have had one-to-one support from a connector service to take that first step, but not all. But they will all then require the community organisation to pull them in, to help them on that first step of joining the community and so creating a sense of belonging. This is key in creating new connections. However, it is also really important in maintaining connections and how to stay part of the group as they face some of the challenges of ageing, such as increased frailty, dementia, hospital stays, and bereavement. Our learning has been shared through a film, which we will see shortly, and several reports, including a practitioner's guide, which outlines how to make community groups and activities as welcoming as possible for older people. It's based on the experience and expertise of the practitioners who organise or run these groups in Camden and on the experiences of the older people who attend them. We're currently compiling a toolkit to complement the report as well. We have found that once a warm welcome has been established and people feel comfortable and at ease within the group, a culture of participation and power sharing creates an environment which can really enable people to thrive. Ageing Better has shown the value of working with older people to produce a relevant and engaging programme. It's hoped that one of the legacies of our work will be to persuade and influence other organisations to work in the same way and ultimately share power with those that they are working with. So I'll end by showing you the warm welcome film, which features some of the members of the Older People's Advisory Group. I hope you enjoy it. And I also hope it works properly.
Yes, I mean, children's first day at school, going first to university, leaving home, going to a new job, any of these things takes a courage. Always deep down there's this, am I going to be welcome? When I first started going to meetings after I retired, I was very nervous. And then I went to the West Euston Partnership. I went up and down the stairs to the door several times before I finally knocked. And suddenly a lady came forward and said, "Oh, how lovely to see you." And I felt as if, I'd sort of found a new world, discovered a new continent. They were so pleased to see me.
I came to the OPAG, Older People's Advisory Group meeting for the first time just a year ago. Right away, someone welcomed me, gave me a seat that was actually quite near the person leading the meeting, and all in all, I felt welcomed.
To me, a warm welcome is when somebody from the group approaches me, says hello, and initiates conversation.
I would think essentially smiling faces at the reception, welcome and smile.
It does help to have a phone call to remind me that I should attend. I like to be greeted and introduced to somebody, and it would help tremendously if I had a lanyard with my name, because nobody remembers everybody's name anyhow.
Tea, coffee, bits to eat, and again, all of these things just encourage people like me to talk to others, to get to meet them, to get to feel that I'm welcomed.
A warm welcome to any group is very important to me, because when you go at first, you might be a bit shy, and with someone there to welcome you in front of the door and to show you around makes you more relaxed and comfortable. And with that, you'll want to come back again and to tell others about the group or organization and make it grow bigger and better for everyone in the community.
It is important because it does encourage one to come back to the center.
It makes me feel more comfortable, and it also makes me want to participate in that group of people.
It's important to me to come to these groups because it gets me out of the house, relaxes me, makes my brain work a bit faster. I'm always willing to learn more and to be able to make more friends. Also to get me out of the house and don't look after the grandchildren all the time. I want something to do for myself in my old age and not to just stay home and get lonely and bored.
A warm welcome is important because a person has plucked up the courage to come to this place, and the least they deserve is a warm welcome.
So now I'll hand over to Lydia, who's Aging Better in Camden's communication officer, who made the film, and Celia, a member of the Older People's Advisory Group, who features in the film as well. And they'll talk to you about making the film. So over to you then, Lydia and Celia.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to take you on a really quick whistle-stop tour of co-producing films, and then Celia and I will have a conversation about the process of making the film. So I'll just share my screen. I'd like to thank DEEP, the Dementia Engagement and Empowerment Project, for their guidelines on co-producing films, which is where some of this inspiration has come from. So for us, film is a powerful medium that, when it's used positively, can make a huge contribution to increasing understanding about a subject, but it can increase stigma around an issue and be disempowering for people if it's done badly. Involving participants at every stage of the filmmaking process ensures that the film contains messages that they want other people to hear. And this really involves time and planning. So you really have to ensure that you've got plenty of time to seek input and feedback from participants at different stages of the process. So I'll quickly run you through the process in 6 stages. The first is planning. So within our OPAG meeting, we had an initial discussion. What do you like or not like about other charity or awareness raising films that you've seen before? And what should the tone of the film be? So during this discussion, lots of our OPAG members said, we don't want to see, tired depictions of someone looking sad at a window. We don't want to hear sad music. We don't want to hear kind of lots of tired tropes that we've seen in films about older people before. So we decided the tone should be positive and should be active. And in this part of the process, we also discuss who'd like to be involved in the film and how they could get involved and allow people to ask any questions. So next up, I draft an outline and then take it back to the group. We discuss the outline and I simply ask, what do you think of it? Is there anything missing? And is there anything that isn't quite right at this point? So once we've got our outline, we move on to recruiting participants for the film. So to do this, it's important to have a letter so that people have information in front of them and they can also refer back to it when they're thinking about whether or not they might like to be involved with the film. So some of the key details would be who you are, specifically your role in the organisation, and if you're not within that organisation, who you are as a filmmaker, why you're making the film, who will watch the film and how will they watch it? Will there be a screening? Will it be available all over the internet? Who's funding the film? The tone of the film and how participants will be portrayed. It's really important to provide a way for people to contact you if they've got any questions about being involved. Provide information about how people can get involved and what exactly will be required. So which times and dates people will be required, and be respectful of people's time. Finally, it's important to include an understanding of what will happen if someone changes their mind at any stage of the process, or if they don't want to be involved anymore. It's important to be really transparent about that. Will they be able to be removed from the film? Will they be able to say, actually, I don't want to take part anymore? So when everyone's read the letter and had a chance to digest some of that information, we'll discuss it as a whole group, allow for questions, And after the group meeting, I tell everyone I'll be around for a while if you'd like to have a chat one-to-one if there's a question you didn't feel comfortable asking in front of the group. And hopefully at this point you get some takers. Next stage is filming. So for this particular film, we did all the filming on a day of the OPAG meeting, straight after the meeting, so that no one has to travel, and so that some people decided on that day, actually, I'm going to go for it and I'm just going to be involved. It's really important to ensure that people know how the interview will work. So explain that they can do takes as many times as they want, explain that you can edit things out, make sure that everyone knows it doesn't have to be a perfectly polished speech and that they can say, oh, stop at any point. Make it fun, put people at ease. One way I like to do this is explaining to people as I'm doing it, what I'm doing. This is the microphone, I'm going to point this at you, either look into the lens or look over here at me. Some people might even like to come behind the camera and have a go themselves and stick me in front of the camera and see how that feels. Next up is the edit. So I'll do the first edit and bring it back to the group and say, what do you think? And allow feedback into the final draft. Finally, when we've got our final draft of the film, we'll have a screening within the OPAG meeting so that the whole group can celebrate the hard work and the contributions of the people involved. So co-producing films can take many different forms. I've worked in the past on really specialist projects where people are actually trained to use the camera and sound equipment themselves to become filmmakers. So if you've got any other questions about different modes of co-producing films, please get in touch. I've put my email address there. I'm going to stop sharing now and welcome Celia, one of our participants in the film.
Hello, good afternoon.
Celia, could you tell us a bit about why you decided that you'd like to be involved in the film and why that was important for you?
As I said in the film, I thought it quite important that people have a warm welcome, but also as someone who participates in OPAG, I mean, I'm informed and have a big mouth and I'm opinionated. And so I'm there partially because I think it's important that older people have a voice, and this is my neighborhood and this is my city. So that's part of that aspect of I participate because I think it's for the good. In the case of this film, I'm not great at being in front of the camera. I like being behind the camera. But again, it was an important message because that warm welcome definitely mattered to me. And I know it absolutely matters to others. And so I thought it an important film to make.
And how did you feel like the process went? Did it feel awkward and difficult, or did it feel okay to you?
Yeah, well, it felt very natural because, again, it wasn't a speedy process. So it was developed. So it felt like a natural, organic process rather than, okay, well, this is what we want to do with you people, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
We were part of that process. And I think that is absolutely important, which again is why I'm participating now. I think it is important to ensure that others get the message of including having co-participation rather than just suggesting what we should do, but having us take part in it.
Absolutely. And how did you feel about kind of putting your trust in us to be involved in that process?
Again, I think because it was not a rapid process, because we had taken part all the way through, I could opt in or out. It felt fine to me just to express myself, knowing that I trusted you and I trusted the editing and I knew I could look at it before it went out. That's why, again, the process you've indicated in terms of those very important steps, knowing that, okay, I could opt out, before you finish that film and say, actually, I hated the way I looked. I did, but that's just my point. I always hate the way I looked on film. So, but for me, that's part of it. I think that people know, just as any research project, okay, right, I don't have to go through with this if I suddenly decide that it's terrible and it's not for me.
Mm-hmm. That's brilliant. And just to take a moment to say a huge thank you to you, Celia, and to everybody else involved in the film. And we shall hand over to Kate and to Jess.
Hi, I think I was going to speak first and then hand over to Kate. So I am Jess. I'm the project coordinator for We Are Aging Better in St Pancras and Somerstown. And I was just going to speak very briefly about how I approach a warm welcome from the point of view of a coordinator. I think if someone new is coming, I generally try and meet up with the person beforehand in a sort of one-to-one setting, because I think it can be really overwhelming coming to a group and not knowing me and not knowing anyone. I think it's really helpful to have met me and to have talked through the program beforehand. And then when they come to whatever activity it is, they know me and I'm sort of a point of familiarity. And also, I just wanted to talk about ensuring that it's really important to ensure, I guess, that existing members of the group are on board with a warm welcome, which is quite tricky sometimes. But I find that if I'm modelling a certain way of welcoming people, you know, if I'm modelling a kind of non-judgmental, warm stance, then generally I think that can help feed into the group and say, look, this is how we do things here. This is how we welcome people. And also trying to, if I've met the person beforehand, I can sort of initiate discussions like, oh, you've been to this group before, can you tell so-and-so about it? So that I'm sort of initiating discussions so they get sort of involved in the group in that way. And I also like, if it's a first session, to try and tie members, new members, into upcoming activities. So I'll say, oh, there's this coming up next week, so that they feel, yes, I'm part of this project now, I'm included, I'm not just a newbie. And just one more thing to add on, I think sometimes a warm welcome can be really hard when there's a long-term existing group and there's this issue of kind of seating. And one thing that I did once, which worked quite well, was just simply to change the setup of the room to make it so that people sat in different places. And it really did make a difference to, I guess, people coming in feeling more welcomed, that there weren't set seats and things like that. So that's just a kind of practical thing. But yes, I will hand over to Kate to give her viewpoint. Go.
Thanks, Jess. I feel like I'm the donkey's tail, really, because everybody has said everything, except that I suppose I was very resistant to joining any group of older people. I don't want to be seen as an old person, partly because of the stereotypical images that are given. Even that picture of the bent old lady that tells you that older people might be crossing the road, I hate. But I now find myself involved in at least 3 or 4, possibly, older people's groups. The first one that I went to, and I'm not going to name because actually I think they're a great group, but I found really difficult because I'm not very good at small talk. And I found myself actually seeking some kind of security in making the tea and handing out the biscuits, because at least I felt I had some role. Because people were, as Jess was saying, you know, they all knew each other really well. They were in tight-knit groups. They gossiped about each other. You know, they weren't a very integrated group. But I was invited to one of the OPAG meetings by somebody who I know quite well, and he kept inviting me and saying, it's a really good group, you know. And then one day he said what the presentation was going to be, and I was interested in it, and I went along. And I was amazed. I think of all the groups that I go to, it's probably the best. Because I think there was that you know, I walked into this room full of people, but somebody came up and said hello, said their name, had it clearly displayed on them, asked me who I was, wanted to know a little about me. You know, I wasn't just going along. They wanted to know who I was and why I'd come along, and I wanted to know about them, what their job was. And they showed me there was a lot of information out. And I think, and then I was introduced maybe to a couple of people, and we were sitting around one big table, and that seemed to work quite well because, you know, there were little gaps and people just filled in the gaps. So they weren't all sitting with friends. And I was introduced, but I was also made to feel as if I had some valued experience. And I think that's the most important thing. I'm not there just to listen. I've never been one of those sorts of people. I am interested in what's going on in the locality and nationally. And I want to be involved in it. I don't want other people making decisions for me. So it's been really good to be included in that way. I think there are very good explanations about events that are going on. We have fun, as one of the people in the film said. And I think that we share a lot. We share a lot of information and expertise and make friends. You know, my husband died 8 years ago, and I must say I felt really isolated, and certainly the pandemic hasn't helped in that respect. But I think the other thing is that you feel equal to everybody there, and at the end you're invited to come back and you're given information about it. And I think that is really important, because it is really awful if you just walk away from a meeting and you haven't the faintest idea what's going to happen next or whether anyone will ever contact you. So I actually think that the group is run really, really well, and it's been a major contribution to my life now. So I'll just finish off with that, really. There isn't any more to say. And thank you for listening. Oh, I'm handing over to Sue, I think.
You are. Brilliant. Oh, I so enjoyed hearing what everybody had to say, and I hope you who've joined us today really enjoyed that. There's a chance now for questions, and any of the speakers that you've heard will be able to answer those questions. We were suggesting that you put questions into the chat, but I don't know that any have come up yet. So please raise your hand if you can. Can we see a hand risen if the screen is off, if the cameras are off? Is that possible? Yeah, it is. So are there any questions out there? Could you, Annabelle, yes.
Yeah, but I can't work out how to raise my hand except by actually raising this hand. I'm looking on the screen, I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do. I guess this is a question for you, Sue, about how you feel your role as a sort of OPAG representative on the strategic board, which then sort of shapes the funding of the programme, how those two roles fit together, and whether you see the OPAG representatives that sit with you on the strategic board, which obviously includes you, Diana, as well, whether you feel that that works in creating a sort of equal peer group with the other statutory and voluntary sector agencies that sit on that strategic board.
I do feel it's an important role I have to be on the board, and that I do try to represent the issues that come up at the OPAG meetings. And I particularly feel that I am listened to, and the other older people on the board are really listened to. We're not token people there. And that's really key. Like Kate, you know, I have something to say about my locality. It's important to me. And we always report back from the strategic board to the OPAG meetings. The OPAG meetings always have an update from the program managers about what's been going on. We're also consulted by other agencies, so people within Camden can come along to ask our opinion. And again, I do think we're listened to, we're valued. So I think it's, you know, reciprocal. And the main thing is it's not tokenistic. So yeah, it's an important role. And I'd love to tell you all that despite lockdown, the OPAG meetings have continued for the last 18 months. We've done it on Zoom for those who can join us on Zoom. And we do that once a month. And every month we do 2 telephone conference calls as well. So the same OPAG meeting, the same agenda that's done on Zoom, we repeat it on the telephone for those people who can only join in that way. It's continued, people join, we have a good turnout every month. And Diana, can you say something about the newsletter that's gone out from OPAG?
I think one of the really nice things that happened was right at the beginning of the lockdown, in more than a year ago. OPAG made a huge effort at keeping everybody in touch with each other, and I think Sue did the first one. It was just a sort of little letter to all the other OPAG members. It went out by email, went out on paper as well for people who hadn't got email, and it sort of pulled together useful information, but it had this nice little sort of personal message, personal reflection on how people were feeling, and it just became a sort of habit that every little message going out had somebody else's introduction at the beginning of it. And in a way, it's strange, but you got to know people very well from reading those little messages and stories, and whether people were feeling down or what had made a difference, what was important. And I think the way that OPAG members have sort of kept in touch with each other, and actually, to some extent, kept doing normal business through the past year. I mean, with useful discussions about controversial things like HS2, which is really important. And it's like Sue was saying. I think OPAG is listened to. I think it's valued by people who come to give presentations. People from the council and people delivering adapted chairs and things to people's houses. I can't remember what the firm is who do that, but they come and say, how does the service work for you? And they listen very carefully to what's said, and it's really good.
Thank you. Lydia?
So just to say, someone in the chat has asked about the toolkit. So I just wanted to, they've asked, will it be widely available? And yes, it definitely will from the autumn. So if you'd like to keep in touch with us, we'll absolutely make sure you've got a copy of our Warm Welcome Toolkit, which will very much be a practical guide for practitioners running groups with older people who'd like to make sure that there's a warm welcome within your group.
Thank you. Hello, question to anyone? Can I read this out? I am a sheltered scheme manager in Norfolk, and the biggest challenge for our community is to encourage people to find the courage to venture out. I've started meeting people one-to-one to update their details and then ask if they would like to come back or join our coffee mornings. But people have got so used to staying in their flat. We've got a wonderful team on our project, the outreach team, who've done a lot of work on sheltered housing. Alison or Annabelle, would you like to say a little bit? Because I'm sure this, the questioner here would be so interested in what the outreach team have done and how they've made connections during lockdown.
Thank you.
Alison or Annabelle?
Do you want to talk about it, Alison?
Say a little bit about it, and then Annabelle can chip in with anything, because I'm quite new to the project, so I might not know all the details. But the outreach service, it's a wonderful service, as Sue says. They're very much geared up on reaching people who are the most isolated by just getting out and about and meeting people. So within sheltered housing, they've done a lot of work prior to lockdown, where they were sort of door knocking and getting to meet the residents and find out what people that were living there actually wanted to do. They've had to adapt their approach during lockdown because of the difficulties of working in that way. So through the first lockdown, they set up a telephone scheme which enabled people to keep in contact and telefriends. So it was a sort of befriending telephone scheme to put people in contact, have a chat. And I think some of those conversations that started back in the first lockdown are still happening, which is lovely. And also they've adapted through the summer when we were allowed to meet outside in groups of 6. They did pop-ups in the park where they would just advertise very locally on bus stops and within the park to say the team would be there and come along and have a chat. And they were giving away face masks to people at those meetings and hand sanitizer just to bring people along, and had a lot of really meaningful, quite involved conversations with people who had been really kind of struggling through lockdown. They also, as a way of kind of getting people together and getting out and about again, did some outreach walks in small groups where very, very local groups of people would meet up. They would bring them together. One of the outreach team would join them for a walk around the local area. And what is hoped is that those groups will eventually become self-sustaining, and that the outreach team will eventually be able to step away and people will just be friends that meet to do those walks sort of locally as well. So they have adapted quite a lot throughout the past year to new ways of working. And I know that they have done a lot of work previously in sheltered housing. I don't know if Annabelle wants to add anything about the work they did before on the sheltered housing.
I think just sort of more specifically to people coming back out of lockdown, I think when they've been meeting people post-lockdown, what they've sort of in and out of the different lockdowns and then this one, is that they found people definitely have quite differing levels of comfort about how they feel about coming out. So Stephen, I think the idea of talking to everyone one-to-one and trying to establish what that is probably really key. But also I think people do feel that there is less risk outside. So if, depending obviously on the mobility of the people that you're working with, which I know varies quite widely in sheltered housing, it may be trying to connect 2 or 3 of them together to go for a little walk might feel easier than trying to come to a sort of more everyone together inside coffee morning. But obviously you know your people and whether that would work. But just I think that idea of just sort of having a little bit of time outside for some people maybe feels less risky or less threatening than sort of feeling that they're going back to a group. It's a sort of stepping stone back in, if you will.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a very good idea, that walking. And yes, I think the trouble with the coffee mornings is that because people haven't been able to enter into the lounge, and we're just about to start opening up, but it's only 6 people, that includes me. And, it seems a bit too unwelcoming, really, doesn't it? Your distance, and some of the people can't hear very well. You're shouting across the room. Nobody's actually said to me they want to do that, but there are people who want to play snooker. There are people who want to play piano there. So I think individuals will go in there, but I think it'll be a while until everything open up, maybe in June, that it won't be the same until we can all go in there properly. But thank you for those ideas. That's great.
No worries.
I've put some of our guides there in the chat as well, Stephen, if those are helpful for you.
Thank you, Lydia.
Well, maybe we should draw things to a close. Do any of the team want to add anything that they haven't thought of? No. Okay. Well, Lydia's already mentioned the toolkit. The resources we produce, or Lydia produces, are always of a really good quality, very, very helpful. So look out for the Warm Welcome Toolkit. Should be ready September, October time on the website, full of practical information and resources. And get in touch if anything that you've heard today is of interest and you want to follow it up. Thank you very, very much for coming. And thank you to all the participants on the team for doing your bit in this very co-produced way. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. and bye-bye.